Hi, my name is James Gwertzman. I'm the general manager here at Microsoft for what we call our gaming cloud. And today I'm talking about the future of gaming. And we're going to look at a whole bunch of different areas where games and game technology are being applied both inside of gaming and out. And hopefully you will take away some interesting lessons that may help you think about the future where you and your own studio or career may take you. Um, I like to start actually by looking at this with the big picture, which is that gaming right now is huge. We all know this, but the fact that we're making $170 billion a year in gaming and there's 2.6 billion gamers on the planet is really remarkable. And what this means, of course, is that games now are really for everyone. When we say games are for everyone, we don't just mean this. This is the Microsoft Adaptive Controller. It's a really neat device we built at Microsoft to help make sure that anyone can play a game, even if they have physical disabilities. And it's a very flexible device. So this is great because this is part of how we make sure that everyone can play games. But it's not really what I mean. What I mean is more like this. The fact that we now have casual games on mobile phones is really what's led to this massive explosion in people able to enter the game industry. And if you just look at the numbers, I mean, look at this: $180 billion, calendar year 19, projected to reach $220 billion by FY23. So obviously, the game industry is bigger than ever. We love to talk about how it's bigger than movies and music and home video combined. So this is clearly the biggest business, and I think in another couple of years will pass even paid TV, such that video games will actually be the biggest entertainment vertical out of all of them. And of course, as this has happened, and frankly, part of why it's happened is games have changed dramatically, right? Games, when I first entered the game industry back in 2000, they were all products. You put them in a box, you sold them in a store. Marketing was all about just making the sale, and there was no communication between the creator and the player. It was a complete sort of dead channel. And so we then got to game of services, and for the last maybe decade or two, we've been in the game of service space where games are now services. So what that means is you build a game, you ship it, and then you have to run the game. So typically they're downloaded. Marketing is now about acquiring a player, not so much making a sale. We now have telemetry so that the game creators can start to see what players are doing and get some information. Often very mobile focused, very free to play focused. That's really where we've been. I believe we're now entering this new era, and we're just at the beginning of the kind of game as community era, where games are actually becoming platforms in their own right. The games are becoming true communities of players, and a lot of things are now different. First of all, often cases of direct distribution, so going from the game creator straight down to the player. Marketing is frankly part of the fun. The entertainment starts with marketing. So maybe you're watching a streamer streaming a game, or you're at PAX, trying the game out, or you're getting an interactive ad or something. The marketing is part of the fun. And now we have really two-way communication between creators and players. So the players nowadays have a voice. They have social media. There's an expectation that they're loud and they're talking back to the creators. And frankly, they're kind of part of your design team. They're just like an unpaid part of the design team. And so good game creators recognize this and have really brought their players in a way we've never seen before. And so with that, the nature of gameplay is changing. So it's no longer just about play the game. Now you might be chatting, or you're watching, or you're creating, or you're buying, or competing. There's all these different verbs that you're doing. And frankly, the number of verbs keeps increasing. And with that, we love to talk about Fortnite, of course, is now the big game. Everyone talks about Fortnite. I think there's a couple things in Fortnite that are worth calling out. The famous Marshmallow concert, I think, is going to go down in history as the moment when gaming really turned a corner. The fact that we had this live concert for however many, 25 million people staged inside of a video game, making it the largest concert of all time, I think is really going to say something. And we're going to continue to see ways in which games are now crossing over and really being this whole new form of entertainment. So when I talk about the future of gaming, I really look at this concert and Fortnite as being on the very, very kind of cutting edge of that. Of course, this notion of pushing into this live game model, has an impact on revenue. If you look at the top grossing games worldwide, 80% of them were the same game from 2018 to 2019. And if you look at the list on the right there, every one of those games was at least $1 billion. And we've never had in the history of entertainment this much consistency before. Usually, entertainment products come and go. Because these games are services, because you can operate them, they have this persistence. And so, clearly this is being affected by the business model. So free to play is now 70% of the total revenue in the industry. Mobile now 51% of the total revenue, and way bigger than the others, and frankly growing faster. So 19% growth year over year versus say negative 5% growth in the console space. So clearly mobile and free to play are the big segments that are growing. So as a result, here at Microsoft, when we think about this and think about the future of gaming, these are the scenarios that we think about and that I'm organizing my team around as we look at the future. I think these are the things you're going to really see investments happening in. Number one, how do we move game production to the cloud? COVID really drove this home for many of us, that working on-prem on desktop machines is really not the most efficient way to do it. Moving things to the cloud lets you accelerate your production. Creating effective communities. We think more and more developers want communities inside their games and need the tools to do that. That means multiplayer, it means anti-toxicity, anti-harassment. There's a lot of technologies you can put there. It means knowing your players better and having better analytics and better data for who your players are. Growing player lifetime value, taking your players, and since you're now acquiring players into your game ecosystem, growing that value of the player to your studio over time through higher engagement, higher retention, higher monetization, all the things you might do to sort of help your players be more valuable to you as a developer. And finally, of course, attracting new players, right? And it might be performance marketing, it might be social viral tools, it might be better discovery in app stores. These are the scenarios that we think about as we look to the future. Now, I want to talk about that LTV one for a second, because live ops is something near and dear to my heart. I think a lot about how more and more game studios now are adopting live ops. I do think this is part of the future of gaming, is the fact that every game studio really needs to start thinking about how they operate their game on an ongoing basis. And if you take live ops and sort of break it down, there's two parts here. And I believe that every studio needs to kind of adapt. Live just means you're building a live game. The game is connected. This is really mostly an engineering shift. It means your engineers and your team thinks about when they build the game, how do you keep it connected? How do you have back-end services? How do you do analytics? How do you have multiplayer lobbies and the ability to chat between players? That's on the live side. The ops is the operation side. How do you actually operate the game on an ongoing basis? What's your team look like to do that? How do you invest continually in running your game? This is really the hardest one of all. This is the one that really requires a mindset shift, a strategy shift, a culture shift even. Here at Microsoft, for example, we have a lot of first-party studios, and I would say it's taking 5 or 6 years on average for an existing studio to really make this mentality shift and switch over to thinking about operating a live game versus just building a packaged game and shipping it. I like to think about the role is very different. It used to be making a movie was like being a movie director. Sorry, making a game was like being a movie director. You make it and you put it out into the world for people to enjoy. And I think now it's more like being a nightclub host or a cruise ship director, where your job is now to sort of create an opportunity for your players to have a great time, but it's a subtle shift. And in many cases, you're creating an environment where every player is going to have a slightly different experience. And then that really does shift a lot of how you do it. And so when we think about what modern live ops looks like, this is sort of a vision of what the tech stack ends up looking like, where you have sort of all these verbs that you want to create for your players. You need services that live out in the cloud to sort of provide these services to your game. You players, as they play the game and engage with your experience, are generating data. You're using the data to sort of generate insights as to who your players are. Those insights are being used to then change the nature of the experience and personalize the experience around your players so that you're doing sort of intelligent actions back, and then do all that in real time, right? That's really the challenge of the modern tech stack for games. And it's super exciting to see how the cloud is starting to make a lot of this possible. But let me switch for a second and talk about some of the other things that we're seeing affecting games, and other things that affect what I consider the future of gaming. So another big one is it's never been easier to build games than it is now, right? Anyone now can download Unreal or Unity, and I would argue that Roblox is a game creation tool that is frankly just important, if not more important, than these others in terms of democratizing development. It's like we keep getting easier and easier with every generation of tools, and I think Roblox is, I've been playing a lot of games in there with my daughter, super sophisticated games in many cases. Just maybe the graphics aren't as good, but that's okay. The players don't often mind, and there are millions and millions of people in the top games. The top games on Roblox are frankly top 10 games in run right, with in some cases 20 or 30 million monthly active players or more. I want to then also look at how some of these tools are being used outside of gaming. So, this is a shot from the recent Lion King game from Disney. Not everyone knows that what's interesting about Lion King was all the pre-visualization and shooting was done in VR. So they basically created the environment, and I believe they were actually using Unity for this. They created the environment, and then they actually had the cameras and all the tools of modern filmmaking. They were being used to capture the shot data to produce the film. And so you were actually, wearing VR headsets to explore the sets and to basically capture the camera angles. And it's a way more intuitive way of shooting a film than the old-fashioned way where you're having to do it all, with in animation tools. To actually give filmmakers VR tools as they go in this environment and capture shot data, I think is fascinating use of game technology outside of gaming into the area of entertainment. Another example of where we're seeing this really interesting is on The Mandalorian, another Disney property. The Mandalorian had, if you look in the background there, that backdrop is a live LED wall. And they were using the Unreal Engine to basically create live environments for the show. So you don't have to do as many visual effects in post-production. And it also creates way more realistic lighting on the set. So that and the way this works is as the camera moves around, the camera is attached to motion capture. And so they know exactly where the camera is, and they can then change the parallax and the angles in the background to match. And the result is many more of the shots can be captured directly live in the camera and not require the post-production. So again, another fascinating example where game technology, in this case the Unreal Engine, being used to help produce films. I also, to kind of take this notion of virtual worlds. In that case, they were using virtual worlds to get the backdrop for Mandalorian. I look at games like Red Dead Redemption and say, when I look at the amount of effort used to build the world for this game, really wondering, are we going to start to see investments in worlds like these done once and then used for many different games? And are we going to start to see almost like worlds as a service, where people would build worlds like this, and instead of doing it once and then say, I'm never, just for this one game, reuse that over and over again? And at the end of the talk, I'm going to talk about our flight simulator game, which is sort of using a virtual world based on our real world, but more on that later. To me, of course, that notion reminds me of the TV show Westworld, where you create this, in this case, kind of theme park, and there's many different stories happening inside that theme park. I think we're actually going to start seeing that with game worlds, and I'm waiting to see the first game built inside of someone else's world and sort of leveraging that asset. We can't talk about the future of gaming without talking about game streaming. So obviously we have Microsoft xCloud, we have Google Stadia, there's others coming. The notion of host a game in the cloud, stream it to a device. Latency, of course, is the big question mark. As we get to 5G, as we start to get faster networks, we already believe we're at a point where the latency is fine, such that you can have a terrific experience. And one of the things that once you start streaming, a lot of things become a lot easier. Like the development environment is a lot easier to build. You can pause the game and restart it more easily. You can resume it anywhere. It's just by taking people away from the need to have gaming PCs and consoles and moving to the sort of streaming world, it does open up a lot of opportunities. And we're already starting to see now what this might mean for gameplay when all the game clients are basically in the same data center with super fast networking between them. What can you do with multiplayer that you can't do when you have to actually have distributed devices out in the client? So that'll be interesting to watch. Back to Roblox for a second. We talk about how the sheer number of games that are out there. I really do believe we're going to continue to see this explosion of games, and just the ease with which you're going to see games being created. The other thing you start to see, of course, is going back to this notion of community, is the ability for players to create content and contribute to those environments. And we mentioned it in the context of community. I mentioned this here in the case of Minecraft, the notion of players creating skin packs, and the ability to not just create them, but to sell them, means you start to see user-generated content being a monetization stream, where more and more players start making a living creating content, selling it to other players. And almost like an Etsy, but inside of games. Again, another shift that's starting to really change, I think, how we think about the future of gaming there. And obviously, there's many of these, not just the texture packs, but entire worlds you can build and then sell. And then what we're doing at Microsoft is we actually take care of processing all the payments. And then every month we're cutting checks and sending money to developers. Again, I think this is opening up the economy and really changing how this plays out. Switching gears again, we talked about live ops. This is interesting because it's a quote from Satya. We talked to Satya a while back, the CEO of Microsoft, about live ops, and he loved the idea, and he really kind of grabbed onto it and said, wow, that's an example where things you're doing in gaming that are cutting edge could start to apply outside of gaming to other applications. And since then, we have now done some tests with things like Marriott and Delta and other sort of big hospitality brands are all very interested in this notion of what does it look like to take some of the ideas from gaming live ops and apply them to non-gaming scenarios. And so Microsoft's come up with this term enterprise live ops. You might see us talk more about that in the future. We're actually building this into now some of our other tools beyond the gaming world. Microsoft Dynamics is our tool that businesses use to run themselves, and they're starting to apply live ops techniques in there as well. And so it's really neat to see how some of these techniques and knowledge leave gaming and go into these other industries as well. Another topic is machine learning. So Microsoft is huge investments in machine learning, as does everyone. We see machine learning. I think there's an opportunity to apply it throughout the entire game lifecycle. So whether you're building, testing, launching, operating, every one of these, there's an opportunity to apply machine learning. Talking, for example, about the live ops, here's just a quick summary of just some of the ways I've seen people using machine learning to optimize their live ops experience for the game. So things like how to personalize your game, what promotions to offer, how to set your pricing, looking for fraud or cheating, looking for problems and alerting. Those are all examples of machine learning on the live ops side. And then I do want to talk about Flight Simulator, because Flight Simulator is a fascinating example of using machine learning on the content creation side. So, this is a game that was built by a partner for us in France, but we actually use a partner from Austria, to Black Shark, to help us take petabytes of map data from big maps, and by processing the cloud, actually generate content for the game. So take New York City, for example. New York City, if you fly through New York City in Flight Simulator, this is actually a very faithful reproduction of New York City, built from actual 3D geometry captured from New York. And so this is really us recreating New York in the digital world with very faithful dimensions. This is fantastic when it's available. We've only done this, though, for about 400 cities around the world. And so for the rest of the world, what we're actually doing is generating the geometry based off of two-dimensional satellite map data. So if you fly around Rio de Janeiro, for example, this is an example of a world that's actually recreated live from the map data. And so I'm going to show you this quick video. What we're doing here is taking the Bing data and showing how by taking all this petabytes and petabytes of satellite data, we're actually generating geometry, 3D geometry based on that, and that's actually what's going into the game. And so this, to me, is really another one of these kind of turning points when you ask yourself, where we go into gaming. This is really going to be one of those moments you look back and say, wow, you can fly through the entire world in this game. Now, here in Paris, for example, only a few buildings were hand created. Like the Eiffel Tower was hand built. Everything else is done by machine learning, based off of those two-dimensional images. So the way it works is it scans the satellite imagery. It looks for basically buildings and features, and then there's a series of different models, machine learning models, that can basically generate the geometry based on those on that footage. And so this is just showing you kind of the scan of what that process looks like. And then once you have the geometry, you actually have different facades, and different parts of the world are going to have different styles based on surrounding buildings. So that you obviously Japan should look like Japan, Germany should look like Germany. So the features will actually be different based on which part of the world it is as well. And the crazy thing about this is the sheer amount of data needed to do this. Thanks to the power of the cloud, we were able to run this model in about 72 hours. And so basically every night, or not every night, but you can scan through all that data with hundreds and hundreds of processors. It takes 72 hours to generate all that geometry, stored in the cloud, and then as you're playing the game, it's all being streamed down from the cloud in real time. And so again, to me, this is sort of one of the true cloud games, one of the first kind of true cloud games that we've created. And so with that, my time is almost up. I do want to finish with a kind of a plug. If you're interested in the live ops in particular, we do have a podcast that my a colleague, Kristen Cox, and I host called The Art of Live Ops. We're now on to season 2. And I would encourage you to check it out. So you can listen to this on anywhere you get your podcasts. We're up now to I think 30 or 40 different episodes. So there's a pretty good backlog of content. It's pretty fascinating. For example, you can hear the Naked Santa story from Unreal Online. Sorry, from Ultima Online. So in one of the first episodes with Raf Coster. So with that, I'm going to close right on time. I would love to take some questions if we have time for Q&A. If you want to learn more, come visit us at Microsoft, and we'd love to see if we can do anything to help you with figuring out the future of your games. Thank you.
Yep. Good to go. Cool. James, thanks for that. That was a really great kind of opening of kind of what you're seeing on the Microsoft side from a gaming perspective. Just as by way of introduction, my name is Steve Sobel. I am the global industry leader for communications, media, and entertainment at Databricks, and I'm going to be sharing a little bit today about the work that we're doing specifically in the gaming space, but also the great work that we're doing with our partner Azure. To kind of help gaming companies realize this new future of gamer centricity, of focusing on gamer experience, and some of the things that James covered in his remarks. Before I dive in, just a little bit of who we are and what we do. So Databricks, we are the big data and AI company. We help to unify the worlds of data engineering, data science, and business analytics on one platform. So generally speaking, our kind of core personas of who we're helping are data engineering teams that are looking to get more performant pipelines, helping them make data science teams more productive by having a single workspace to realize AI, ML use cases. We have the great fortune of working with over 5,000 customers throughout the world. We are our 6 founders of Databricks are the original founders of Apache Spark, which is the de facto big data processing engine of choice for many enterprises across the globe. And we've also been the largest contributor to a few other open source initiatives. First, Delta Lake, which is about bringing more performance and reliability to the modern data lake, and ML Flow, which is really a data science productivity tool to help with model efficiency, moving models into production, and really optimizing the full machine learning lifecycle. Gaming is actually for my business, and again, I manage our communication, media, and entertainment business. It's actually our largest business, and in a moment, I'll talk about kind of why we're seeing that. Every single one of these logos that you see here are customers that are trying to get to one-to-one personalization, or trying to get to real-time or near real-time use cases, are myopically focused on kind of the gamer lifecycle. So we are really kind of focusing and working with them, and particularly now during this COVID time, we've seen a tremendous amount of demand from across the gaming sector as kind of the focus on real-time experience has accelerated. When you kind of think about, James had some really great insights on kind of, the focus on gamer experience, gamer lifecycle. This is absolutely something that we're seeing as well. And COVID has been a fascinating kind of event for everyone in the gaming industry. When February and March, when things started shutting down, you had more consumers at home. Some of the customers that I've talked to in the gaming space, saw traffic that was double, triple, quadruple what they would see on a normal day. I had one customer say, basically COVID is like Christmas for us every single day. We are seeing, tremendous amount of demand hitting our platform. We need tremendous amount of scale. And while this has been great, this has been the demand gen event of a lifetime for many gaming companies, the problem has then become, how do we keep these new people that are on our platform? So, personalization, whether that be, real-time personalization, near real-time, how do you lessen your customer acquisition cost? How do you drive a more kind of coherent and a more one-to-one life cycle, one-to-one journey? This has been an absolute focus for what we're seeing across many gaming companies. Personalization, of course, is kind of the main focus, but certainly we're seeing more gaming companies try to understand how do they better monetize the gamer experience. This could be things like, the ability to drive cross and upsell. It could be, more BI type use cases that involve customer lifetime value and understanding cohort analysis of, what are folks that are most likely to convert, most likely to transact. So understanding both kind of the in-game monetization strategy, but also how do you leverage partners as a key monetization strategy has been a kind of what we're seeing and kind of where a lot of gaming companies are focused. And last but not least, innovation, agility. But there are no longer studios, publishers can no longer be held back by challenges of kind of your infrastructure. So being able to really move fast, stay ahead of your product development lifecycle, really kind of stay ahead of the business when it comes to having an agile platform to deliver personalization, to deliver a better gamer experience is absolutely core to what gaming companies need to be doing and what they're investing in here and now. While that all sounds lovely, in many cases, IT organizations within a gaming studio, within a publisher, are challenged by very common areas where things like the ability to handle streaming workloads to get to a real-time experience, the ability to be able to join batch and streaming at scale, the ability to take very complex data sets, whether it be SQL-based data sets or whether it be image analytics, whether it be voice analytics, whether it be getting to use cases like James talked about around understanding player toxicity. These are high-scale, always-on workloads that oftentimes, when you think about the scale the gaming companies have, unbelievable scale, probably the highest, scale and the ability to have, as many players on the platform as possible. In many cases, data science and kind of machine learning, AI, or these types of use cases oftentimes are elusive to gaming companies. Understanding how do we reduce churn, understanding the quality of service across all of our players, understanding sentiment across, are our games performing? Getting to these kind of high value use cases around data science are often hard, just based on how many gaming companies are architected. And really, what most of the industry is driving towards is being able to drive, self-service analytics so that, a data engineer, a data scientist is not, needed for every single time, the business has a query that they want to be running, providing a tool set where, the business can interrogate data when and where they want it over time. And ultimately, for Databricks, we are a platform that helps unite the worlds of data engineers, data scientists, ML engineers and data analysts all in one platform to help accelerate their work around big data and using AI and machine learning to get to some of the outcomes that I've talked to earlier. So, not only are we unifying these teams on one platform, we have one architecture with Azure that's really a better together architecture where you get the best of everything that Azure provides. Things like Synapse, things like Power BI, things like, kind of putting tools in the hands of, business users, business analysts, with really a high performance engine underneath that architecture to get to some of these, real-time and near real-time use cases. So for our platform, you see the top layer here, we're kind of, again, bringing all of these different data personas together. Regardless of what the use case is, we kind of have this one standard better together architecture with Azure. We have this high performance query engine. So again, when we talk about the need for real time, near real time, when we talk about, how do you kind of involve AI and ML in the use cases, these are all things that are part of our platform out of the box. We have Delta Lake, which is a structured transactional layer. This is really taking the ability to handle, structured data, unstructured data, semi-structured data, video files, audio files, whatever the data is. We have the ability to take all of your data, make it ready for AI use cases, and do it really fast. And really the partnership that we have with Azure, Azure Databricks, actually, it's a first-party service that is natively integrated into all of the tooling within Azure. When you're actually transacting with Databricks, as part of Azure Databricks, you're actually doing this on Microsoft Paper. So we make this super simple for our customers to be able to, again, get the best of our world, which is kind of big data, AI. How do you take machine learning and kind of apply it to all of your data? And the best of Azure, all of the security, all of the DevOps capability, ability to kind of be integrated into the Azure portal. These are all things where that are absolutely critical to the success of ensuring that you have an end-to-end analytics and ML pipeline within your Azure environment. Again, as a first-party service, we're integrated into all of the data services, whether that is ADLS, whether that is the data factory, the event hub. Again, you would kind of ingest the data through the Azure native services. We're kind of the processing engine that sits on top of that. And then if you're looking to interrogate the data, their integrations like Power BI and Azure Machine Learning are also a core part of the offering. In terms of kind of what this looks like within kind of the conversation of, many of the customers that we're looking with struggle with, taking data that is both semi-structured and unstructured and kind of taking what is raw and creating a curated data lake on top of this raw data. Basically, the better together story of Databricks and Azure Databricks is, kind of taking the components of the platform all together. So things like, ETL, streaming, data science, machine learning, these are things that Databricks kind of does. But we also work really closely within kind of other tools within the Azure platform, like Synapse. So for SQL-driven queries, low-code pipelines, it's kind of a great area for to kind of work together with Synapse. And then, of course, Power BI is kind of the traditional BI and visualization solution. So again, all of this kind of coming together, no matter if your data is, streaming, batch, we have this kind of great architecture here that you can kind of see of how this all works together. So a typical gaming company, will have logs coming in. Again, we'll have, structured data that's coming in. Maybe they're having gameplay data that's coming in, kind of customized application data specific from the gaming platform that's coming in. Again, whether it's coming in batch or streaming, it's ingested via Azure, it's stored via ADLS. And then if you are applying machine learning, if you're applying AI, if you're applying the processing layer on top of this, this raw data, Databricks comes in to basically prep and train the models. And then the models can be served out through the Azure Kubernetes service. Could also be served into operational databases like Cosmos or SQL database, or could be served through Power BI for a ad hoc analytics use case, or through Azure Synapse in terms of a kind of low-code pipeline use case. In terms of what we see in the gaming space, for Databricks, in Azure Databricks, we're a platform. I always like to say, we provide the canvas, our customers paint the art. We have a number of, thousands of different use cases that customers are building on our platform. But if there's any way to kind of bucket these in the gaming space, we tend to focus on three main areas. First is gamer acquisition and churn prevention. Second is monetization and sentiment. And third is traditional game development lifecycle, so more of a product focus. Specifically on the acquisition and churn prevention, frankly, when I talked earlier about kind of the demand that we're seeing in the gaming space, and kind of the need for real-time or near real-time use cases, we've seen a significant amount of investment in all things gamer lifecycle and kind of acquisition and churn prevention through this year. If I think about, some of our customers like, Wildlife Studios or Riot Games, they've been myopically focused on keeping people on their platform, increasing time on site, increasing customer lifetime value, average transaction size. And a lot of these come down to how they're optimizing for the gamer life cycle. So things like recommendation engines, things like omni-channel personalization, things like in-game recommendation in either a real-time or near real-time fashion, things like churn prediction and churn mitigation. These are all use cases that we're seeing quite a bit of. We also are seeing a focus on, as these platforms are kind of maximizing their scale, use cases around quality of service and quality of experience. Is there any buffering within the experience? Are there any degradations in terms of the end user experience? Really getting around your arms around the life cycle, creating this one-to-one experience. This has been a huge focus for what we're seeing in this space. The second area around monetization and sentiment, these are going to be use cases around Player 360. So how do we take all of the touch points we have around a customer to maximize the lifetime value? But there's also use cases around, how do we track performance across all of our different platforms? How do we understand kind of who our whales are and who they are not? And how do we kind of work our marketing and kind of our customer and gamer engagement strategy around that? Things like social sentiment analysis. So being able to scrape, kind of Twitter, Facebook, social channels to understand what is the sentiment of the game, any sort of ability to understand both NPS and CSAT. And we also see quite a bit of kind of next best offer, next best action use cases as well that are aligned to, again, how do we have the one-to-one experience, but then how do we better monetize that experience over time? This last area of game development lifecycle, these are more kind of product focused. So, how do we get enhanced insight on, gameplay insights, game design? We do quite a bit of toxicity analysis. So we have a few different kind of social gaming platforms where, toxicity, of course, is a leading indicator for churn. So how do you kind of automate find that toxic behavior, automate a workflow to give the player a warning and be able to monitor that behavior over time. So, being able to use kind of machine learning to optimize a lot of that process rather than needing a team member, a person to intervene in real time. So again, all of these kind of come together around, and again, we have different kind of companies that are doing different things with us, but by and large, the value that we're providing is the ability to drive real-time use cases, do so at high scale, and apply machine learning to all of the massive scale of the data that gaming companies are producing on a hourly, daily, and yearly basis. An example of a customer that is running on Azure Databricks that I wanted to talk a little bit about is HyperHippo. Some of you may know HyperHippo. Their biggest game is Adventure Capitalist. We've been working with them for a couple of years now, and they came to us, with a few different needs. They actually, and some of you might be more familiar with their kind of their former name, Screenzilla, but they kind of go by both HyperHippo and Screenzilla. They had a few different challenges that they were looking to solve for in their work around big data, AI, and ML. First and foremost, they had a plethora of kind of machine learning tools that they were using. They had data scientists that were coding on their machines rather than having a single platform. They were trying to make it as easy as possible to not only simplify the tool set that they had for their end users, but really being able to move to more of a data lake type architecture rather than having the data warehouse be the source of truth, particularly as they were trying to get to some of these real-time in-game experience use cases. As they were scaling, they were looking for kind of a reduced cost. Again, as they kind of were simplifying their tech stack, they realized that they had a few different kind of solutions across both their data engineering pipelines and their data science workflow. So really kind of making things more simple from a platform perspective also was about how do they kind of lessen their liabilities over time. And ultimately, it wasn't just about kind of having a data lake to collect the data, but really machine learning and AI capability on top of that data lake so that they could get to some of these more foundational data science use cases and really have machine learning be the core of their gamer experience. So a great example of kind of, when we talk about being a platform and the types of use cases that we see and the types of use cases that you can use to scale. These use cases that you see here in bold, these are use cases that they have live in production now. So, not only are we helping them to optimize their ad targeting and kind of how they manage their loyalty programs, but really kind of understanding, gamer lifetime value. What are all of the touch points that we have with the end gamer? How do we take all of the clickstream data that we have to start to understand consumer sentiment, consumer interest? How do we drive a more personalized experience, not just in game, but also on our marketing channels as well? And, really what we see for many of our customers in the gaming space is they're going to start with a hair on fire problem. Maybe it's we just need a single view of all of our customers across all of our different touch points, and putting that in an enterprise data warehouse doesn't give us the flexibility that we need for kind of, taking in a streaming workload. Or maybe it's, use cases around churn mitigation and next best action, next best offer need to be optimized. we'll start with a hair on fire problem, and then we tend to find more use cases over time where we can kind of help drive more incremental benefit. And certainly the work that we're doing with HyperHippo around kind of starting on the life cycle and then kind of expanding into more of the kind of product and gameplay analysis is pretty par for the course for what we see across many of our customers. Certainly, it's certainly not to exclude the work. HyperHippo is a great example, but we're also doing a number of other high scale use cases in the gaming space. So of these kind of customers that you see here, the majority of them are kind of customers that have streaming pipelines that are coming into Databricks for things like recommendation engines. I think about the work that we're doing with Jam City. It's all about how do we drive incremental kind of purchases and leverage recommendations to increase average shopping cart size, increase the transactional value that we have with our end gamers. I think about what we're doing with Tilting Point, which is all about how do we drive real-time offer generation based on performance? How do we do very targeted marketing to kind of keep people on the platform, keep people sticky? And certainly the work that we're doing in Riot, I'll dive in a minute, because this is another great example of kind of a end-to-end, how do you optimize both the life cycle, but also how are you leveraging kind of a high-scale solution to get product analysis as well. We see across kind of, again, the value that we're providing is, really helping drive more speed, more agility around kind of these use cases and the time to value that data teams are seeing. But also the ability to have one platform across data engineering, data science, and business analytics to help drive kind of a more unified data analytics strategies is really a differentiator. Specifically, kind of a little bit of a deeper dive on Riot and kind of what they're focused on. So again, been working with them for a few years now. One of the initial use cases that we worked with them on was optimizing their e-commerce experience in their player store. So for some of their games, they have skins that players can buy. Instead of a universe of 2,000 skins that a player could buy, how do we take behavioral information, preference data, any sort of sentiment triggers, behavioral analysis that we can take to really start to drive, take that kind of universe of thousands of skins and really draw that back to what are the 4 or 5 most likely that will get a conversion? They've seen some amazing conversion metrics around, how they're helping to drive this e-commerce experience over time. And certainly that's where we started, but that's not at all where we've ended. We have more operational use cases with them around kind of fraud detection. So how do you leverage structured streaming to understand any sort of fraud, whether it's credit card fraud or whether it's defrauding in-game currency? Understanding brute force attacks, so more kind of security use cases. I had mentioned kind of the toxicity detection. This is kind of how are we using real-time natural language processing to see any abusive behavior, warn the player, and be able to kind of keep a safe environment for all of the gamers that are within the platform. Big focus on in-game experience, whether that is, understanding, any sort of performance issues within a game, any sort of patch monitoring, but also kind of that player quality of experience, being able to show players their spend, how much time they've been at the end, they've been on the platform at the end of the year. So again, a lot of these are, whether more kind of operational security focused or more kind of in-game experience focused. We see certainly a number of these use cases kind of run the gamut across customers like Riot. We as a company and as a partner with Microsoft, we often talk to customers that are maybe struggling with getting to high value machine learning and data science use cases. Very commonly, particularly in the gaming space, you have some of course, I've talked a lot about some of the larger platforms, but it is certainly not to exclude, gaming companies that are smaller, that are developing. Many of them are, trying to scale really fast. Maybe they lack data science expertise to get to kind of high value use cases, or maybe they are newer to the gaming space. They don't understand kind of the industry domain expertise to actually get some of the use cases into production and get these use cases driving more value. And more we're seeing customers that just want to get moving quicker and faster. And they're looking for more of a recipe where they can kind of take, different components, different assets to help move use cases into production that much faster. So we have kind of started a program that we call Solution Accelerators. And essentially what we're doing is we're packaging material, we're packaging notebooks, we're packaging architecture, we're packaging how-to guides together for what we see as high impact, but also repeatable use cases. We're giving our customers these notebooks and basically allowing them to take our code, take the models that our teams have built and be able to move them into their own production environments. It's a great way to either get started around a POC and, rather than a POC taking, months and months, how do we take a POC down to a week or 2 weeks max? And again, the use cases that you'll see here and that we're developing are all really focused around, what we see as high value and can be deployed, within a customer's environment relatively quickly. We have divided, or we're focusing on kind of a few different areas that are relevant for gaming companies aligned to these accelerators. These are notebooks, how-to guides, kind of architectures, kind of how-to videos that are available for these use cases that you see here. Again, we've kind of accelerators that are available for streaming quality of service. We see this quite a bit, not just in the gaming space, but in the traditional media space with kind of streaming video and audio platforms. I found, streaming quality of service to be a foundational use case. Things like personalization and recommendation engines don't really matter if you're not providing a quality service to your end user. So this is an area where we see a large amount of investment in the gaming space. Customer lifetime value. This is a huge use case that we're seeing for every gaming company, not just understanding what can be the average customer lifetime, but what is going to be the average estimated future spend with the customer. We have a couple gaming customers that are using these materials now, but we also see this broadly in any direct-to-consumer media or entertainment service. Customer survivorship and churn. This is a huge one. I was like bringing up the field of dreams adage: if you build it, they will come. For any direct-to-consumer platform, any gaming platform, everyone is seeing consumers are going to come, but they're not going to stay unless you give them a reason to stay. So things like understanding churn risk, understanding why churn is happening, what lead channels are most susceptible to folks leaving, what are the price points that may have folks susceptible to leaving. These are all things that many gaming customers of ours are looking to understand, and certainly an area where they're investing. And last but not least, kind of sales forecasting and advertising attribution. Think of kind of this is a new take on the traditional kind of media mix modeling and kind of attribution modeling, where you can take offline and alternative data to understand advertising effectiveness. We've seen this in kind of the live event gaming space, kind of the esports space, but in terms of understanding return on ad spend, but certainly an area where many of the gaming companies that we work with are trying to get more granularity around understanding their ad spend and kind of putting their money into the right channels over time. Again, we've these accelerators that I've kind of called out here. These are available to the public. We make them available if you're interested in either evaluating Databricks or starting a POC. A couple different kind of resources here that I can point you at. So first, we have a mobile gaming ebook that's available. If you go to this link here, dbricks.co/adbgaming, we can get you access to this free ebook. And then if you're also interested around starting a POC around one of these solution accelerators that we have, or just learning more about Databricks and what we do in the gaming space in general, definitely feel free to join dbricks.co/gaming contact, and we'll be happy to get you more information. And with that, I thank you so much for having us today. And I think we do have a few minutes left for any questions.
I believe the question is around, the question I saw is around asking about tools like Spatial OS and other tools for helping distributed render technology. Yeah, no, so yes, I think they can be profitable is a simple answer. For example, we have a close partnership with Hadeon right now. Hadeon is one of the examples of a company providing distributed simulation technology, and we're actually seeing that kind of technology being quite useful. We've actually done some tests with Minecraft and Hadeon to see what it would be like to have thousands of players in Minecraft playing together, and it's actually working quite well. And so I actually think there is an opportunity, especially in the cloud now, to bring many more players together in a world than ever before. And I'm quite excited to see where the space goes. Well, thank you for everyone. Thank you very much for the time to chat.